Good? My deep happiness is to just get to play in the Dhamma. To just soak ourselves in the rain of the Dhamma. And allow whether it's through words, whether it's through our own experience of our body, of our feelings, to just allow the wonder of this impermanent, always changing experience of the present moment to teach us and to heal. It's like such a wonder. And it doesn't, end because of, or begin because of birth, or end because of death. It's just going on. And we have this human body, and we're able to learn and practice it. So just having all of you here and practicing here at Deer Park is so nourishing for the monks and nuns. Well, at least for the monks. I think for the nuns too, right? Because this is our whole, this is our life, right? To go deeply into the Dhamma. We're aware as well that the conference, the UN climate conference in Glasgow is going on right now. And so on Sunday we send energy to all the people who are gathered there to try to look deeply into the situation of the climate crisis and to stop just talking about it and do something with real teeth in it. And so Phap Luu from Deer Park, as well as I think Brother Phap Luu from Plum Village are there right now, and they're teaching meditation to friends who are there at the conference. So offering our energy of peace and calm to a very difficult situation. Each country, each organization, each corporation has its own interests, and they feel responsible to the groups from which they come, their country, their corporation, their organization. And finding a way to transform our collective behavior as human beings on this planet is not easy. There's no one person who can just who has all the power and who can just make that change. And but we know that there are those of us out there who have wealth and a lot of influence over many of us, and how not only through us but also in how resources are used or abused in the world. And so our deep hope is that through our practice we not only find ways to contribute to bringing our climate to a more stable place, but also that we can support others who are out there who have the ability to change their way, to steer the direction of their corporation, their organization, into a path of a deeper understanding of the earth and all of the beings that make up the earth and that are on the earth, and including ourselves. So please, in your hearts, hold our two brothers who are there at the conference, as well as everyone there, in your heart, so that we can help to change the situation. So this is the practice of our tradition, engage Buddhism. We don't just sit in the monastery when the bombs are falling and now we have a climate crisis. So we need to find ways. And it doesn't mean we have to go out into the street and protest. Sometimes that's what we do, even the monks and nuns. But right here, right now, in the present moment, just by following our breathing, calming our thoughts, really being present, we are actually creating an energy, a collective energy of mindfulness, which is changing. It has a non-local quality. And so today, I'm going to share a little bit about how, when we talk about the bodies of the Buddha, how we can expand our notion of what a body is, so that we see that actually we don't need to physically go here or there for our actions to have effects. The last class we talked about that the Buddha is a human being, and that he does not cease to be a human being when he becomes a Buddha. And that also means that we all have the capacity to be a Buddha. And so it's an invitation to let go of all those excuses or stories that we've told ourselves about, sometimes about our suffering, but also about who we are. So to kind of like allow ourselves to shed those layers and allow this awakening, this light, this mindfulness, concentration and insight to manifest. That is what the Dhamma helps us to do, to let go of our notions, our concepts, as well as that feed our anxieties, our worry, our fear, and just allow this light of mindfulness to shine brightly. And if it shines brightly for a long time, that is Buddha. So Buddha is not something out there, right? It's something that is realized in this very body. And now we'll learn about the bodies of the Buddha. So this is I'm not sure we'll be able to cover this in one class. It might be a bit much, but I'll do my best. The Buddha has many bodies. The body of a living being. The physical body. The Dharmabody. Here it's a little bit, in the text here it's a little bit a different order, but it's okay. The body outside the body. The Sanghabody. The continuation body. The Dharma-realm body. And the true nature of the Dharma-realm body. And since human beings can become Buddha, they also have all these bodies. So what does all this mean? I kind of hesitated. I thought maybe I'll just put one on the board and then go into that and then the next one. But here you have everything. So the main thing is to help us to let go of our preconceived notions of what a body is. Because we study, or I could say, it's not that those notions are wrong, but rather they're quite limited. And we tend to just think that this physical body, the living being, that's it. And when we die, we go back to the earth, and that's done. that's our entire body. And so even in the time of the Buddha, very early on, we talked about the Buddha's physical body, but we also talked about a Dharmabody. And that Dharmabody meant the teaching of the Buddha. So when we study the teaching of the awakened ones, we learn that our actions are our true continuation. So we know that action in this sense is our thinking, our speech, and our bodily action. We sometimes call them the three karmas. I've mentioned it many times. actions of mind, speech, and body. And we can I like to use the image of an orange tree, and if we take good care of the orange tree by putting compost near the roots and making sure it has enough water, making sure it's not too cold in the winter, and then that orange tree will produce beautiful orange flowers and then fruit that we can eat and enjoy. So the fruits and the flowers that are produced, we can see as our actions of body and speech and mind. So they are what go out into the universe. So even when that orange tree produces its fruits and flowers, they go out into the world and they have the effect, right, of, for example, you eat the orange, I think in Solidity Hamlet we usually have oranges for breakfast, thanks to the shopper. And so when I look at that orange, I see, this was a flower before. I can see the little, kind of like the belly button of the orange, the little, where it attaches to the tree, and then it's picked off. And then we get to, eat the sweet fruit. And so I know if the fruit is sweet, that means that all the conditions have come together to produce a good orange. And if it's a little bit bitter or sour, I think, well, maybe they didn't have all the good conditions to produce a tasty fruit. So I can look at through the result that goes out into the world, I can see the nature of how the tree was cared for. And so the Dharmabody of the Buddha is, we can say, in the early teachings, because it went through many different meanings, is the continuation of the Buddha when the physical body of the Buddha is no longer there. So today we still are listening to the Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma. That is the Dharmabody of the Buddha. It is the continuation body. So in the early teachings we talk about the body of a living being and the Dhamma body as the continuation, the teaching, the acts of mind, speech and body of the Buddha that are continuing out into the universe until today. In Mahayana, and we've talked a bit about the Mahayana, the great vehicle, so I don't want to get too much into the Mahayana because I've covered it in previous classes, but it's a sense that there's a path of, it's not only to perfect our practice as the practitioner, but also for the benefit of all living beings. And so there's a movement within Buddhism to try to emphasize the aspect of our practice is for the welfare of all living beings. So actually, as we learn, we try to see that a real arhat, a real perfected one in the early teachings is also a bodhisattva. It's not separate or different. And a real bodhisattva is also an arhat. It means a perfected one. And so actually there's no separation between early Buddhist teachings and Mahayana. Tai often said that in the Plum village practice, we use the lens of the Mahayana to look into the early Buddhist teachings. Because we don't want to get caught in the trap of just getting caught in words or concepts. That happens sometimes with like in any tradition, any spiritual tradition, people get caught with the surface or just the words or the concepts, and then they don't have the spirit anymore. So Mahayana is a movement from within the Buddhist tradition to revive the spirit of the teachings, and not get caught in just knowledge of the different teachings of the Buddha and systematizing, categorizing, and memorizing them. Yeah. So that's a kind of very, very simplistic description of Mahayana. And so that the Mahayana tradition is very creative, so it allowed for new Dhamma doors to enter in. And rather than the litmus test necessarily being that it was said by the historical Buddha, it's more about the experience of practicing and learning that teaching. And does that lead to awakening? And so this is the creative, not only the Mahayana, but many aspects of Buddhism are creative. If it is going in the direction of true liberation, we can include it and say that is a Buddhist teaching. We're not caught by having to have been, it was said by the historical Buddha, you see. So the Dhammakaya is a creative aspect. The Dhammakaya is the Dharmabody. Kaya is body in Sanskrit. So this is very fun. During this class, we've been learning some Sanskrit words, just for fun. Don't worry about it. So the Dhammakaya has a creative aspect. You don't need to be caught in the literal words. But if it really has the flavor of liberation, true awakening, that is a Buddhist teaching. And the Buddha also allowed for that. We know that even in the time of the Buddha, that he allowed his students to teach, like Shariputra, Mahamoggallana, and so forth. And they introduced new concepts, like we listened to in the chanting the 5 ways of putting an end to anger. And that's taught not by the Buddha, but by Shariputra. And so we know that even in the Buddha's time, he encouraged his disciples to find creative ways to practice. And they didn't have to just repeat word for word what the Buddha was saying. So in the Mahayana, they developed a practice of what they call 3 bodies. So here we have many bodies. And this is the product of Thai's insight and the Plum village insight. So developing on the body of a living being and the Dharmabody, we have the manifestation body. And this was another way of talking. We could see it as like the body of a living being. But in there, the Nirmanakaya in Sanskrit is the idea that actually you could say a misunderstanding that the body of a human being is not enough to contain the Buddha. And so we talk about almost in a lesser way, like the manifestation body, what we see physically of the body of the Buddha is just a mere kind of sliver of the wholeness of the Buddha. And so, so on one side there's an invitation to see more than just what is physically visible to the senses, but there's also a sense of, again, that the Buddha is more than human. Right? So it's a kind of, so I'm just for historical purposes, I'm presenting these so you understand a little bit about how these understandings of bodies had come about. And then there's what's sometimes called the enjoyment body. This is Nirmana Kaya. For those who are interested. This is Sambhogakaya. And this is the product of all of the accumulated virtues of the mind, speech, and body of the Buddha. So we can say the merit of the Buddha. We talk about merit. It means concretely this body, what we experience in the present moment, is the product of causes and conditions which have been sown in the past. So the fact that, not only the fact of this body, but the fact that we're physically here at Deer Park, that all these conditions have come together, that we can be at this place in this present moment, that is a product of the actions of the past, not only of ourselves as individuals, but also our ancestors and our teachers and our society and so forth. So the Sambhogakaya is a way of expressing that. It means specifically for the body of the Buddha, that through countless lifetimes, the Buddha has cultivated good seeds, and so it is the manifestation in the present moment of the Buddha. All those virtues manifesting. So the bliss, you could say, of the Buddha, the happiness, is the Sambhogakaya. And so sometimes it's called the bliss body or the enjoyment body. Sambhoga is like a kind of enjoying, like you reap the fruits of past actions. So it can also be called retribution body. And that retribution body can have an individual aspect and a collective aspect. So it includes both our 5 skandhas, our body, feelings, perceptions, mental formation, and consciousness, which we experience in the present moment, but it also includes our environment. So Tai often taught about these 2 aspects of the retribution body. That what we are experiencing now is the fruit of both in our body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, but also in our environment around us. That is also the product of our past actions and those of our ancestors and the Dhammakaya. So true nature body. You can say true nature or suchness, Dhammakaya. So here we're talking about Dhammakaya, but it's been the concept of Dhammakaya has been extended to represent all phenomena. So instead of just the continuation of the Buddha's teaching body, whether through words, actions, or so forth, this Dhammakaya is the entire phenomenal universe. And so when we chant in the morning, the Dharmabody shines brightly as the day dawns, right? So that is talking about the Dhammakaya not in the sense of only the Buddha's teachings, but also all phenomena. Yeah. So, and the very suchness of things. We also have a gatha for if any of you are interested in monastic life, or even if you're not. The Stepping into Freedom book, you can learn the opening the window. I see the Dhammakaya. Right? So you see that the Dhammakaya is not only outside the window, but it's also inside of you. Right? It's not just outside, but it's also inside. So all of these are just different ways of looking. And if we get too caught in it, like say, this is the manifestation body, this is the retribution body, this is the true nature body, then we miss the point. These are kind of teachings to help us look at this experience we have of the present moment in a new way. So they're all practices. They're not for the sake of theology, right? Or philosophy. I can listen to a sound of the bell. So this is a later development in the Mahayana. But already, before the Mahayana, so we have the body of a living being and the Dharmabody, and sometimes what Thai calls source Buddhism. But within the many schools of Buddhism, they also developed 5 kinds of bodies. So we're getting the grand tour on all the bodies of the Buddha. Is it okay if I erase this? And these are good to know because we still talk about these kind of bodies today. So this is sometimes called the Buddhism of many schools, and actually it is contemporaneous with the Mahayana. I mean, it precedes, but that also we continue to have many strands of Buddhism. So there were, sometimes it's called the mainstream schools of Buddhism. And there were sometimes numbered 18 around the time of the Common Era. Beginning of the Common Era. So the first kind of body here is the precepts body. Shila. And this is very familiar to our brothers and sisters who just received the Bhikshu precepts. So we talk a lot about how our practice of the precepts is something that is not just contained within our body, but it is something that is transmitted to us by our practice of the precepts. So, or mindfulness trainings. So, when we are in the presence of someone who has a practice of virtue, who is kind, who respects the property of others, who is not trying to harm, doesn't have these kind of habits, then we feel something very kind of warm. We feel safe. Like I hear a lot today, we need to find a safe space. And many, I know many of the brothers who asked to stay longer at Deer Park. They said they feel Deer Park is a safe space for them. So that is the product of the precepts body. Because we have our precepts around property, sex, honesty, and so forth. That creates a kind of energy where we feel at ease. We don't have to worry, is somebody going to come into my room and take my things? When I go to solidity, is some guy going to try to hit on me? Right? Or something like that, right? We feel like there's something held. And we talk about that as a kind of body that is held by our practice of precepts. So when we're in the monastery, or even as monks, as we go out, and also as lay friends, when we take the 5 mindfulness trainings, then we that is a kind of body, and it has effect. Suddenly people, when they're around us, maybe they don't try to use their usual manner. Maybe they are like tell jokes which are not so nice, or they try to treat us inappropriately. But if we have that precept body, it is like a protection. Yeah, we know we will not. People somehow they just feel it. They like, no, I'm not going to. That person is a good person. I don't want to try to steal from them. I don't want to try to hurt them in any way. And so it's you don't wear any kind of you don't lock your door. You don't wear armor, but it's like you have a protection. You have the protection of precepts, and that is something not just for you to believe from me, but I personally practice the 5 mindfulness trainings for a year after coming to the monastery, so I could try it out to really see if it worked. And I found that it was almost like a scientific experiment. Every time I followed the mindfulness training, I felt more happy. I felt I was safe. And every time I didn't follow the mindfulness training, because sometimes I didn't, then it led to suffering, either my own suffering or another person's suffering. And I thought, wow, how is that? I really observe very closely this kind of difference in the two. So, the best thing, you just trust and you practice the mindfulness trainings. But if you really want to experiment, you might see that, the suffering that comes from not keeping the mindfulness trainings. So it's not for the sake of getting more people to be Buddhists that we have the precepts, but it's for the sake of just protecting, because we want to protect you, we want to protect ourselves. That's why we practice the mindfulness trainings. So the precepts body of the Buddha is the aspect of actions of body, speech, and mind. We have guidelines, and those guidelines help. That is a kind of body. And so we say when we as monks and nuns, or even as lay practitioners, when we violate our precepts, it's a very serious matter, because it's like we've harmed our precepts body. And in order to we need to heal that precept body in order to regain that happiness, that ease that we have when we have our precept body is intact. We have the concentration body. Again, this is a list of 5 bodies from the mainstream schools of Buddhism. And this is a body and energy that is created by the Buddhist practice of concentration. So there are concentrations like no self, emptiness, impermanence, nirvana. So when we, for example, we focus on the impermanent nature of all phenomena, whether our body, our feelings, that's a very profound concentration. So we maintain that as our theme, and we can maintain it throughout the day, even for many days. We just focus on impermanence. We see arising, passing away, everything, the leaves, the grass, the earth, our bodies, our feelings, are rising and passing away. We just notice, oh, everything's impermanent. Even things like stone that seem to last a long time, we can notice that they're eroding over time. And so that concentration, that focus on impermanence, we call it concentration on impermanence. And when we maintain that over time, we no longer fear birth and death. Right? Because we see that this body is impermanent. At the moment it's manifesting, but it's only temporary. And so it helps us to become free from our attachments. Similarly, the concentration on non-self helps us to see that our ideas about ourself are only notions. And what we like, we don't like, we're this kind of person, that kind of person. And the more we hold on to those ideas, the more rigid you feel inside. You feel kind of grasping energy. And so the concentration on no self is a letting go. It's letting go of, I don't have to be this, I don't have to be that, I don't have to like this, like that. Whatever's on the table. For example, I like to practice when I come to the dining room table, and not to look ahead or go up and see what's on the table. Because this is part of my practice of no self. I just go and I take the plate. Sometimes I do look to see if there's a soup, because sometimes they don't put a bowl for the soup. But I don't want to know what soup it is or whether I'm going to eat it or not. That's the point, is not to get caught in preferences. Right? And then I try to go to each item that's on the table, and I just put a little bit of, sometimes I put a little bit more, right? But I don't want to plan out my meal. So notice your mind, because that's self. When we talk about no self, it means practicing to let go of our preferences, our likes and dislikes. So we think we know what we like and we don't like, but actually, do we really know what's best for us? A lot of times our likes and dislikes are our biggest source of suffering. So just open ourselves up and, okay, just a little bit of brown rice, a little bit of white rice. I'm not going to be dogmatic about white rice or brown rice. I just put a little bit of white rice, put a little bit of brown rice, put a little bit of chili, put a little bit of, oh gosh, put that on the same plate as that? Oh my gosh, I've never done that before. You see, that's a practice of no self. And then you sit down and you eat it, and sometimes it tastes good and sometimes it tastes a bit funky. But that's a practice of non-self. Like letting go of what you think you want to eat and just eating what's there. Letting go of what you think you want to do and just being with what's there. Letting go of what you expect of others and just being with what they are, what they're saying, what they're doing, and accepting. Yeah. And that brings a lot of freedom. It's not passive. It's very active. The concentration on no self is an active looking and seeing what can I let go of. Let go of more and more and more. Right now we're working on an update to the Earth Peace Treaty, which was developed in 2007 as a way, out of Thay's suggestion, for us to practice, to commit to heal our relationship with Mother Earth. And many brothers, some monastics and lay friends are contributing to this Google Doc, which has the new version of it, and I was just working on it before I came here. And it's really the practice of letting go, because we get so attached to this sentence being just like that. And then, no, but that was the original sentence which inspired the whole text. But this, I was working with a wonderful sister, and she doesn't like that sentence. And so can I let go and change, and see it the way she sees it? Or do I just hold on to my idea and say, no, I don't want to let go, I don't want to change. So I practice letting go. And it's so wonderful, because you just, like you see, it's not about this or that, but it's about how this comes about in the process. Is there harmony? Is there understanding? Is there joy? Or is it just fighting for this word or that word or whatever it is? So that's also a concentration on no self. The concentration on cessation or nirvana also is very deep concentration. So we practice not to focus on any kind of conditioned phenomenon. And it's difficult, because that's why we have all this practice, because we want our mind to be free. We don't want to be caught by conditioned things. But everything we focus on, our breath, our step, our the food we're eating, our feelings, our emotions, they're all conditioned things. So what is the unconditioned? As soon as you define it, it's no longer unconditioned, it's conditioned, right? And so whether you call it God, whether you call it nirvana, it's somehow, it's always eluding. We can never rest completely on that thing. It is a thing that's just completely without any taste, quality, flavor, touch, anything. And so that's a deep concentration. So when we sing, I have arrived, I am home. Maybe we can sing. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I am solid, I am free, I am solid, I am free, in the ultimate I dwell, in the ultimate I dwell. That is a concentration on nirvana. In the ultimate I dwell. So it's a progression. I have arrived, I am home in the here and the now. So it brings us back to the present moment. We're not lost in the past or the future. I am solid, I am free. When we're no longer running towards the future, or lost in the past, suddenly we become solid like a mountain. And we cannot be knocked over by our strong emotion. In the ultimate, I dwell. So the whole practice is cultivating good habits so that we can touch the unconditioned in every moment, like continuously throughout the day. When a strong emotion comes, it's very difficult to touch this unconditioned nature. So we need to cultivate, right view, right action, right speech, and so forth, right livelihood. That is the Noble Eightfold Path is going in the direction of the unconditioned. So we use the conditioning in order to create conditions for us to easily touch the unconditioned. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's the whole of the Buddhist path in one song. I have arrived, I am home. So all of these practices of concentration are the concentration body, or samadhi kaya. And Tai points out that the precept body and the concentration body are not separate. They're different manifestations of the Dhamma body. Without precepts, we cannot maintain our concentration. If you are sleeping with someone else's partner, it's very difficult to maintain your concentration. You feel regret, or maybe you feel worried. They will come for you with a gun, right? But the point is, or if you steal something, you feel somehow inside this, it's an impediment. It becomes an obstacle for your concentration. So they are connected. So the next is the insight body. Kaya. And we can think of it as the Buddha's deep understanding. So just like we have the trainings of mindfulness, concentration, and insight, also, and we learned already that mindfulness is the precepts. That's Thai's insight. So we see here as well mindfulness, concentration, and insight. So cultivating the quality of looking deeply into our own body, our feelings, seeing their impermanent nature, and so forth, that leads to the insight of awakening. We're free from our grasping towards a self or permanent things. The insight body, which leads to the fourth body, the body of liberation, the liberation body. Vimukti kaya. Much is free. Vimukti kaya. So there's the aspect of freedom, and to the extent that we maintain that body of liberation, to that extent we are free. So these are related to each other. We maintain mindfulness, or precepts, concentration, insight, and then the liberation body stays with us a long time. But when we are anxious or worried or fearful, then the liberation body demanifests, disappears. So there are not enough conditions for it to manifest. So these bodies manifest and demanifest according to how we keep our mind, according to our actions of body, speech, and mind. They can be present, and then in a moment, they disappear. But they build on each other. This is a kind of foundation, our virtue, our ethical way of living, and that is the foundation for concentration to become stable and last a long time. And then we constantly, insight just comes without effort. You don't have to make a big effort to get the insight. Many people come and ask us, the monks and nuns, I have such difficulty making a decision. I have to decide in my life, should I do this or should I do that? And I always find it fascinating, right? Because so much thought and energy has gone into these two decisions that you don't see that every moment you have billions of decisions, billions of possibilities. In what you say, think, or do, you're manifesting futures, and everything is collapsing into the present, which you then move into, this new future, which becomes the current present moment. And instead of observing that countless possibilities that are there in the present moment, you're just caught in these two decisions that you think. And I say, it's not about whether you do that or you do that. But it's about, are you really there right now? Like, are you really present with your breath, with your body? Because whether you choose this one or that one, if you're not able to be truly present, then you will suffer. It doesn't matter you do this or that. So don't get so caught in making a decision of, should I do this or should I do that? Because that's the nature of the mind. We're always making two. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? It doesn't matter. You can fill in whatever you want. It can be go to the beach, stay in the monastery. It can be, should I have chocolate or vanilla? It can be, should I drink Coke or Pepsi? Should I go to the 40 tennis class, or should I take care of myself this evening and stay at home and read a book? I don't know. But the point is, notice that if you look underneath, because you tend to focus on the two things, and you weigh, like, this one has these qualities, and that. If I do this, and it'll be that. But if I do this, and I'll do that. And so this analytical mind comes because of the comparing nature of our mind to take and put two things, no matter what they are, in that space of our mind. It's called a dualistic mind. And it's causing us all kinds of suffering all the time. We get stuck, we get paralyzed, we cannot decide what to do. And worst of all, we forget entirely about the present moment. So, yeah, when you come to a monk or a nun and you ask, should I do this or should I do that? Be prepared to come back to the present moment. Yeah, so the liberation body is available in any moment, as long as we are available for the liberation body. And then there's another and then because one liberation body is not enough, they added we can translate Vimukti Jnana Darshanakaya, the body of liberation due to the experience of wisdom. Ooh! I don't know if we can have a shorter English translation of that. We can say the liberation body due to wisdom. Jnana Darshanakaya. So it's the body due to manifestation or the appearance of insight that liberates. In Sanskrit, you go backwards when you have compounds. So darshana is like the showing or appearance of something, of wisdom, liberation. The appearance of wisdom, liberation, body. And so this is the total awakening of the Buddha. So this liberation body can manifest and demanifest, but this one stays around. This kind of body is when there's no longer attachment. Here, when we still have attachment, then it disappears. And we need to go back and continue to practice to cultivate precept body, concentration body, and so forth. And then when this becomes more and more solid, it stays around longer, there's less attachment, then the full liberation body due to wisdom manifests. So these, again, I think, at least with my way of looking at all these bodies, sometimes I feel, wow, what are all these bodies about? It sounds a bit magical. But when you look at them as a kind of lens, right? You look at, when we talk about precepts body, then you look at your own actions and you see, have I been kind in my words? Have I been generous? Or have I been taking things that do not belong to me? Have I been, saying harmful things? And so that's a way of viewing. It's like a lens on your experience. And the same for concentration body. Is my mind very distracted, or am I able to maintain over time awareness of impermanence, no self? Insight body. Do I feel like I'm able to change my behavior because of my insight into impermanence? Or do I just continue to keep doing the same habits over and over and over again? Right? So insight. If the insight body is strong, then transformation is very easy. If it's weak, we just continue in the same habits. And freedom. Is my mind overwhelmed by anger, jealousy, fear throughout the day, or am I able to have peace, calm, happiness? Yeah, that lets us know how strong is my liberation body. And when it becomes imperturbable, that liberation body, due to insight, we no longer are caught in delusion about ourselves, our idea about ourselves, or about the permanence of all things, so forth. Then it becomes imperturbable. You cannot dislodge the liberation body anymore, because wisdom is always present, and it makes the liberation lasting. Okay, so we've gone over the two bodies, the physical body of the Buddha, the Dhammakaya, the teachings, and now the 5 bodies of mainstream schools of Buddhism, and then touched on the Mahayana bodies that have developed to ways of looking at the Buddha, the manifestation body, retribution body, and the Dhammakaya as all phenomena. So I think we'll finish here, and next class we continue on this tenet. So this tenet requires 2 classes. We'll talk about Thay's insight into the bodies of the Buddha. And so Thay is drawn from the tradition, but also come up with some new ones for ways for us to practice. So thank you for listening. We'll finish with 3 sounds of the bell.